This week on Dialogue, the price of freedom and democracy, Bahrain and the Arab Spring. Welcome to the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars in Washington, D.C. I'm John Molesky. Each week, Dialogue explores the world of ideas and issues in international affairs, history, and culture. Now let's meet our guests. Indrei Ratiu is director of the Ratiu Democracy Center. Nabeel Rajab is president of the Bahrain Center for Human Rights. He's also the 2011 recipient of the Jan Ratiu Democracy Award. Gentlemen, welcome to Dialogue. Thanks for joining us, and congratulations on this year's award.
Thank you very much.
Indrei, I want to begin with you by a little background on the center and the award. Tell us who was Jan Ratiu and what the center is about.
Jan Ratiu is my late father. He was a Romanian dissident who spent 50 years of his life in exile in Britain and carrying the message of a democratic alternative to the Romania of Ceausescu and the communists who took over in 1948. And during the 80s, he came to Washington to lobby on Capitol Hill, carrying the message that Ceausescu was not the friend of the United States that he was cracked up to be. And he received a tremendous welcome here, even though his message was actually controversial at the time. And out of that experience, he died in 2000. My brother and I and our fellow family members, fellow trustees, decided that we would attempt to replicate Jan Ratiu's experience here in Washington for others. So that Nabeel Rajab is a perfect, almost like the poster example, because you come from a country that is a friend of the United States, with a message that your government is perhaps not all it's cracked up to be, very similar to Jan Ratiu's case. And you have also accomplished in this short time here a lot of meetings, and that was what Jan Ratiu did, building networks, making friends, and taking back with him to Europe at that time the confidence and the courage to begin gathering Romanians all over the world in the Union of Free Romanians for Democracy.
What is the process like in identifying candidates for the award and then ultimately selecting the recipients?
There's a committee that consists of a team here in Woodrow Wilson Center, ourselves, the trustees of the Ratiu Foundation in London, and the Ratiu Democracy Center in Turda in Transylvania, and our advisor, Elliot Sorel, Dr. Elliot Sorel from the George Washington University here in D.C. So it's quite a broad group of people, and we start the process early each year in the early spring and review a large number of candidates, and that process gradually fines down. And we always have an eye to an area of the world that not only an individual that is doing work that we feel is courageous and important, and an activity that Jan Ratiu himself would have been proud of and excited about, but also from a part of the world that is in some way already beginning to make news. Quite difficult to predict in the spring what's going to be happening in December, but we try to.
And is it your hope, beyond recognizing good work and important work, is it also your hope that you somehow boost the efforts of the recipient?
That's definitely the scheme, and we're very conscious in some parts of the world it would be a death sentence to come here to receive such an award. So we're aware that it's a very courageous act to actually come here in itself. But we also hope and believe that the networks that you build here, the recognition that you receive here, the friendships that you make here will be a boost to you in your future work. And that seems to have been the case for others in the past. I mean, one of Nabeel's predecessors is the Egyptian sociologist Saad Ibrahim, who also happened to be a fellow of, had been a fellow of the Woodrow Wilson Center. And he's been was already and has become since then something of a mentor for Arab democracy activists throughout the region.
Nabeel, talk to us. You have been in dangerous situations. You've been arrested. You've been harassed by the government, all these various things. What does notoriety of this sort do for your work? I could see how it could be the classic double-edged sword, bring attention, potentially bring support, but also raise your profile in a way that could be a detriment.
Well, first of all, I can't start without thanking the Ratiu's family for the award. And in fact, that has opened up the eye of many people in our region into Romania, where they come from, and into the family, and questioning how come a business family from Romania support democracies and social justice and movement in this part of the world. So this is something that has to be appreciated very much. Secondly, the choosing two people from the region in 4 or 5 years' time itself is something important, something we know, and we think that, yes, democracy in our part of the world has to be highlighted. Movement, people struggle for democracy and human rights and social justice has to be highlighted. So this is one mean and one way that to bring the struggle of the people in this part of the world to light. And again, thanks for the award. What we, in fact, yes, the award for sure, as you know, I mean, I'm speaking now. It is because of Ratiu's family that I'm speaking with you, and it's going to be broadcast. I'm getting a chance which I don't get in my hometown. I can't speak. We don't have that freedom of expression. We are suppressed. We are jailed. We are tortured because of attempting to express our opinion and or gathering. So what happened in the past few months? Many people have been detained. People were killed. People were systematically tortured, fired from their work. Their houses been raided. Money were robbed by security institutions as a result of their struggle. So this kind of award, inviting you to Washington, this give you visibility in Washington, in the international community. You are in an area which is known to be a rich area. They dominate the whole media in our region, and they don't allow journalists to come in to the country. So it's one way, one opportunity where you speak out here. You tell the outside world, you tell the international community what is going on inside Bahrain and inside the whole Gulf country, as it has been ignored by many media institutions and many countries due to the political and interest complication and relation between the Gulf countries and many Western countries. So this is one way when we come out. So this Ratiu award is going to give a protection, sort of a protection. Government know that you are getting an award, so people are appreciating your work. So, I mean, I don't know if that will stop attacking me, because attacking me and my house is something that's going on a weekly basis and everything. And this is only an example of what is happening to the whole activists in Bahrain. But I'm sure that will add to the protection that I have, that today I'm an awardee of a well-known organization and foundation in Romania and in the United States, and I'm sure it's going to help.
You know, for us, the opportunity to broadcast this message is a privilege, and we're happy to help in that way, and it's one of the unintended consequences, perhaps, of this program. But look, a lot of people in the world support democracy in theory, but they don't risk their well-being as freedom activists, as human rights activists. And I'm wondering about that in your background. Where does this begin? Indrei used the word courage. Clearly courage is involved. But where did the motivation come? How early in your life did you see yourself on this path? And then, Indrei, I'd ask you, after we hear from Nabeel, what you could tell us about your father in that regard as well. Where does this come from within a human being?
I think we are normal people who lived and have seen democracy around the world, and realize that our nation deserves to live in democracy, deserves to live in justice, deserves to have dignity. And we know all those nations in Europe or United States, they have not achieved that easily. It's a process that took a long time. It's a process that cost them a lot. It's a process could be dangerous for some people. But there has to be some people to sacrifice. There has to be some people willing to pay the price to get the changes. And we know, I'm one of many people who knows this path or this road is a bit costly, and there are costs need to be paid.
Was there a point in your life or an event in your life that spoke to you on some level that you were now willing to step out and risk your standing in the community, your health, your family? What motivated you to take the risks?
Well, it's a mixture of things, maybe not one thing. Maybe when I was in school, my teacher was arrested while he was teaching me in the school, and then they arrested one of my colleagues. And we were at that time in 9th standard in the school. This
was Al Hura Secondary School, right?
Oh, I'm surprised you know that.
I read that about you.
Yeah, I mean, those things have touched me, and those time where I started being an activist, then again in the university.
So how old were you then?
It was maybe 16 or 15 years of age since I started becoming activist then. But all activism is in secrecy. It's not something, till the 90s, working a human rights activist means a crime. Mm-hmm. You could be put in jail if you are a member of a human rights organization. It's 2000, it's 1999, we start talking openly and acting as a fact that we are there. Otherwise, it was dangerous. So I've been doing most of our work in secrecy, but it's much better now.
And can you tell us anything in this regard about your father?
Yes, two strands there, really. First of all, his family background. We were brought up with a very strong emphasis on the moral values, really, in life. And one sort of honesty, standing for what you believe in, truth. And of course, those were concepts that didn't mean very much to me at the time. Personally, it took a very long time for that to take shape in my own life. He gave us the message, and his father before him, that certain moral values are actually a key to human happiness and a sense of fulfillment in life. It was not a religious message, although there was faith behind it. But it was a very strong practical message. If you want to be happy, this is the way to live. And in his case, it was tested very early on because he ended up in London almost by accident. His first job at the beginning of the war was as a young councillor with the Romanian legation in London. And within a few months, his whole world, as he knew it, fell apart at the end of 1939 into 1940. And then he spent the rest of the war reading widely, particularly fascist literature, communist literature, to try and understand what these competing ideologies were about, and emerged from all that a convinced Democrat. He also had an early brush with death. He was a victim of TB, and it nearly killed him. I think he came out of that experience not afraid of dying, and that helped him enormously for the rest of his life, because he had, like you, many brushes with death after that, including in so-called free Romania post-1989.
So the Bahrain Center for Human Rights, founded in 2002?
And closed down in 2004.
Well, you're still in business in some ways. Tell us that story. What happened?
Well, in fact, 2002, when we start operating openly, And then our director at that time has criticized the prime minister for being corrupt. As you know, that we have a prime minister for the past 42 years, and he is part of the problem going on in Bahrain. So for this criticism, he was put in jail, sentenced into 2 years, but then he was amnestied later. And they closed down the Bahrain Center for Human Rights. But we challenged that, and we continue working. And today we consider to be one of the the strongest human rights group in the country, in Bahrain and in the region also. And many organizations born out of our Bahrain Center for Human Rights. We headed the whole human rights movement in Bahrain, and we have empowered our people, activists, in different fields, and now we are working also at the regional level. We created the Gulf Center for Human Rights that has to look into the situation of human rights on the whole region in the Gulf countries, including Iraq and Yemen.
What is the nature of the work as far as, is it training in nonviolent opposition, workshops? What is the actual work that you do when you work with people who are
well, first of all, we do document most of the human rights violation. Do report that to the United Nations, different committees, Committee Against Torture, Committee to do with discrimination, on freedom of expression. We are the main source of information to the human rights mechanism in United Nations. We are the main source of information to all the international organizations. We do train a lot of activists in how to use the international mechanism, European mechanism, including American mechanism, how to do campaigning and lobbying. And we do advocate, we do appoint lawyers for most of the people in detention who are been there for expressing their freedom of expression, or they're being part of gathering or protest. So we cover many issues, discrimination, systematic torture, freedom of expression. We almost, because we don't have many independent organizations, so we cover most of the, as you know, but unfortunately, our website is blocked in Bahrain. But although it is the hub where you can get all the human rights information on Bahrain on our website, whether we have produced it or somebody else produced it, and its main source of information of human rights stories and reports for whoever looking for those information.
How important is the support and involvement of the international community? I know in a recent interview with Al Jazeera you were critical of the United States' response to the Arab Spring as it manifested itself in Bahrain. But the Ratiu Award is an example of the international community supporting your work. So give us some sense of who you work with outside of the country and how important that is to your work.
Well, we work with most of the international human rights organizations, including many organizations that in the United States, as we all learn in the United States how to do human rights work, we believe in the same principles and values that you have here in the United States. We're fighting for the same goal, but unfortunately we have seen the reluctance of response from the United States to the uprising in Bahrain and to the human rights violation happening in the Gulf countries. We have seen United States have two different packages of response to each revolution and uprising going on in the region. That's why we see, for example, people, how do they view United States in Libya today? It's different than how do Bahrainis young people, because in Libya they've seen how United States took their side. Of course, I'm against any military intervention, but politically they've seen how much United States took their side, including the Syrian today. But when it comes to Bahrain, due to the relation, due to the interest, due to the military presence, now we are paying the price, because United States were very soft with the Bahrain government, which are misunderstood by Bahrain government as it is a green signal. They can go ahead and do any violation and commit any crime. And this is what is going on. I would say that part of our problem, the West, headed by United States, shoulder part of the responsibility that Bahrain government still continue with the repression, still continue with the systematic arrests, torture, and raiding houses and all that. This is one of main messages that I'm trying to deliver in the United States, that we are your friend. We believe in the same value. Yes, we disagree in some of your foreign relation and your foreign, but yes, we do have a lot of things in common. Democracy is not against your interests. Democracy in the long run, it's going to be for your strategic interest. Continuing relation, continuing support of repressive dictators in our region, it will not help your interest in the long run. So it's time now to support the Democrats, to support the movement, to support the uprising, and to pressure those dictators, to pressure those repressive regimes into having a dialogue rather than killing their own people and putting them in jail. So that's our observation about United States foreign policy towards our Gulf region. I would give you an example. Saudi Arabia is the main violator for human rights in the Arab region, but we don't see that in any statement, even including the statement of the President Obama when he talks about the Arab Spring. He talks about everywhere. When it comes to Saudi Arabia, he didn't say anything. Where everybody knows Saudi Arabia today, the biggest violator in the Arab region. This double standard foreign policy has to stop. This double standard foreign policy, it will not serve anybody. Let's look for our interest and American interest and the rulers' interest. We all have something in common. We all have mutual interest. Let's protect your interest and protect my interest to have justice, freedom, and social justice.
This larger phenomena that we've referred to as the Arab Spring, in the big picture, what's happening? What do you see happening? Where is it coming from? Where will it end? How has it influenced situation in Bahrain? Initially, the crackdown and the wave hit a wall in your country. But in the long term, do you see momentum building?
It started, it did not yet stop, and it will not end till it's going to change the whole region.
You believe this is going to be transformational for the entire region?
I have no single doubt. How long it's going to take, how expensive it's going to be, but it has started, it's not going to stop till it's going to change the whole thing. Now, if those regimes, some regimes who are not yet in the track, if they don't start rapidly changing themselves, upgrading their political system, the people are going to change them. They're going to remove them. For many years, we thought that those regimes cannot be changed. We cannot tackle these regimes. But now, Tunisian model and Egyptian model has told us, no, even those dictators, we were convinced that Western government are behind these dictators. So that's why you cannot change them. And we lived with that idea. Tunisian model, Egyptian model, and today what's going on in Libya and Yemen and Syria have told us it's wrong. Those people could be changed. You need to have commitment. You need to know what do you want. You need to fight for a value that everybody share it with you among your own people, and you're going to do the change. Tunisian have done it, Egyptian have done it, Libyan have done it, Syrian and Yemenis and Bahraini are in a process to do it. We tell the international community, we tell the Western government, if you want to be right in the right side of history, not in words, but in practice, you should support those movements now before it's too late.
Speaking of the right side of history, did you see parallels here, what happened in Eastern Europe and at the fall of the Soviet Union?
Yes, plenty. Of course, today Romania is 20 years into post-totalitarianism. And in our discussions with friends throughout the Middle East, we're very often asked, well, tell us about your experience. You've been through this transition before us. And while that's true, Romania, which is a country I know pretty well because I live there, although I was educated in Britain and was born in Britain, hence my accent, is a country that we have the institutions of democracy, we have the process of democracy, but to quote our first awardee, Sergio Aguayo, back in 2005 from Mexico, these institutions don't work very well. It was true of Mexico at the time and true of Romania today. And so we have this sort of overlay of democracy, but the underlying values and behavior in the community, unfortunately, are still largely totalitarian. I mean, whether it's the old networks of the secret police are still functioning. The terror has gone, but the influence is there. Mm-hmm. Corruption is omnipresent. We are ourselves beginning to undergo not exactly an Occupy movement such as we have here in the US or in the UK and elsewhere in the world, but it's somewhat similar. And the main parallel now that I see is that all this is, we have a new technology at our disposal, which is social networking and the IT media, which makes communication so much easier. It makes it possible for us to be in touch. We've managed in our own organization to connect dissidents in Moscow, Tunis, and Cairo at the same time, using Skype in our little town in the center of Transylvania. We're in a new age if we can do that, and I think I'm full of optimism, like Nabeel, that this is just the beginning. The Arab world is no different from anywhere else in the world in terms of people's thirst for freedom and truth and justice.
Nabeel, has social media and new technology been a big help to you?
Oh, very much. I mean, people, I think, follow my Twitter account and Facebook more than they follow the state TV in Bahrain. And it has more credibility than the state TV. Today, in the social media, a statement by unknown young teenager man has more credibility than a prime minister of any Arab country in the Bahrain or in a state. That's it. You have to take this reality. Social media is something, a tool new, which maybe the Eastern Europe didn't have it at the time of the revolution, and we had it, but it's been a good ally, and I think it has done the changes. And thanks God, so far till now, the government has no control.
Well, we wish you continued success. I'm sorry we're out of time. I wish I could give more time, but thanks to both of you. Congratulations once again. Thanks for providing the Ratiu Award, and congratulations on winning it.
Thank you.
We'll return next week with another edition of Dialogue. Until then, for all of us at the Wilson Center, I'm John Molesky. Thanks for joining us.
We'd like to hear from you. Please send your questions or comments to dialogue@wilsoncenter.org. You can also follow us on Facebook. Search Dialogue Radio and Television. Our host Twitter feed is twitter.com/John Milewski. Dialogue is a co-production of the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars and MHZ Networks. Dialogue is available via broadcast, cable, satellite, and telco on MHZ Worldview throughout the United States. To see how to watch where you live, visit www.mhznetworks.org.